Recording started.
Welcome to a briefing call of the Interagency Task Force on Israeli-Arab Issues on Citizenship, Identity, and Political Participation, measuring the attitudes of the Arab citizens in Israel with your host, Michal Steinman. Michal, your line is now open.
Hi, thank you. Shalom, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's briefing call that will try to delve into the question of how do Arab citizens of Israel experience their Israeli citizenship. Arab citizens make up nearly 21% of Israel's population, but yet are significantly underrepresented in all of Israel's major economic arenas and societal institutions. And though increasing efforts are being made by government and by Jewish and Arab civil society leaders in Israel to improve Arab society, the socioeconomic participation of Arab society, barriers remain high and gaps remain large, and majority-minority relations fluctuate. And given these realities, how do Arab citizens today view issues of equality and belonging in Israel? What are the biggest daily concerns of Arab citizens, and do they view civic and political participation as a means of addressing them? Recently, the Konrad Adenauer Program for Jewish-Arab Cooperation published findings of a 2017 survey on measuring Arab attitudes on citizenship, identity, and political participation in Israel, addressing this type of questions that I mentioned. So in order to learn about these findings and about the Arab experience of Israeli civic identity and belonging, we are grateful to be joined by Arik Rudnitzky, who is the project manager at the Konrad Adenauer Program for Jewish-Arab Cooperation at the Moshe Dayan Center for Middle Eastern and African Studies at Tel Aviv University, and by Mohammad, who is the director of the Center for Equality and Shared Society at Givat Haviva. We have sent you the slides that Arik will refer to in his presentation, and Mohammed's remarks will follow. When they conclude, we'll open the lines for Q&A, which you can either ask directly by pressing #1 on your phone, or you could also just send me via email and I can present them. So Arik, please welcome. Pleasure to have you again. Please.
Okay. Hello to everybody and good morning. I'm glad to be here again with you in this talk. Well, today's topic is our survey, which was conducted last summer. And I think that a short background is in place here. Well, we collected the data for this survey in two phases. The first one was during May. We had 3 focus groups. And the second one was a telephone survey, which was conducted in mid-August. And if this rings a bell for anyone here, is the fact that this was exactly 1 month after the disturbances in our Aqsa Mosque or Temple Mount, following the killing of 2 Druze policemen by 3 Arab residents of al-Fahim. And to add to this is taking into consideration the general political climate in the passing year before the survey. Well, it was quite complicated climate in the relationship between the state and the Arab citizens. Be taking into consideration the clashes in al-Haran in the Negev, in the Nakab, back in January, and then again in Kfar Qasem in June. And we heard from time to time statements such as, well, we are back to the military government days, meaning that state authorities view the Arab citizens as a potential security risk. Well, under this background, the purpose of this survey was actually to measure the attitudes of the Arab citizens vis-a-vis their Israeli citizenship. And what we did is actually present them with regular questions that every Israeli citizen should be presented with. Like major life concerns and living conditions in Israel and so forth. And of course, we took into consideration the political and national issues. In my talk, actually, what I want to do is to refer to 3 major points or conclusions, taking also into consideration the time dimension that we have in our talk today, since the survey was conducted. I believe that all of you have the 10 pages file PDF which I forwarded you. So you can see, for example, in page 1, you see general questions. What do you think of the Israeli experience? Is Israel going in the right or wrong direction? What do you think on Israeli citizenship and living condition in Israel? And we see that the general notion among our public is, well, it is not that bad. The position of them, most of them, is quite positive, and of course you have to take into consideration the negative aspects. But what I want to focus on is on two or three points that I want you to refer your attention to. Point number one is what I think is the relationship or the correlation between level of education and national identity and the way they evaluate, the respondents evaluate their living conditions in Israel. Why do I want to do it? Because there is a common assumption that so-called national extremism goes hand in hand with the level of education. Most recently, in the last decade, we heard about the future vision documents which were published in 2006 and 2007, which actually undermined the Jewish character of Israel and suggested an alternative pattern of relationship between the Jews and Arabs in this state. Well, I think that the findings of this survey shed new light on this assumption and actually put a question mark on it. For this purpose, please all take a look at the last chapter on page 7, defining personal identity. I'm going directly to the national issues here. Defining personal identity. Well, we see that almost half of the respondents say they define their identity with national components, obviously, and an Israeli civil component. 1/4 define themselves with pure national identity. We are just Arabs or Palestinians, and no Israeli component is mentioned. 1/10 define themselves just as being Israelis, and another 10th define themselves as we are either Muslim or Christian or Jews. Why is this interesting or important? Because if we take a look at figure 10 and on page 9, I'm relating to figure 10 on page 9, distribution of self-identity and its components by level of education. And what we see here is an interesting case. Take a look. Well, we classified the respondents by level of education, those from elementary school to those who have BA or MA and even PhD. Take a look at the size of the Israeli civil identity. You see a direct correlation between the level or the significance of what of this civil component in their identity, growing from 5% in elementary school to 16 and even 22% in the highest level of education. Also, I want to relate to another example. We will go back to this figure, but for now, please go to figure 5. It is on page 4. Figure 5 on page 4. And I'm relating to personal feelings measured by level of education. Well, you can see here a direct correlation between personal feelings and the level of education, and you see that those with the highest level of education demonstrate the strongest feelings such as personal freedom and sense of belonging to the state of Israel as such, and a sense of stability. What does this imply? Well, I want to make no mistake. Well, the intellectual and the academics and the professional elite in the Arab society has a strong national sentiment. And make no mistake about that. Because if we go back, allow me to bother you for a while, if we go back to page 9, you see the distribution of components in the definition of self-identity. You see that those with BA and MA have the strongest definition of themselves as being both Palestinians and Arabs and Israeli citizens. So you can make no mistake about that. But I think that taking into consideration these findings, well, we have to question about the common assumption that so-called national extremism or strong national identity goes hand in hand with the level of education. What I want to emphasize in this context is that those with the highest level of education do have are well equipped with academic and professional experience, and they do question the level of equality granted to Arab citizens of Israel. If we take a look on page 6, figure number 5, page 6, figure number 6. You see the distribution, and you see how do those with MA and PhD hold strong critics about the level of equality granted to the state from the state to the Arab citizens. So this is just one point about the question of level of education and national identity and the sense of being Israeli and the criticism about the equality granted to Arab citizens. The second point is the question of political participation. And actually, here are some up-to-date news. Our politics today are on the verge of crisis. I assume that you may all know that the joint list is comprised from four independent parties, and today it suffers from internal divisions. I would even carefully say that if elections are to be held tomorrow, well, actually, the future of the list is unsure and unclear. The reason is that there was a rotation agreement between the joint list components, and it didn't come into effect in the last summer, contrary to what has been discussed and already agreed upon during the last summer. Well, in direct contrast to this, what we see here that the Arab public actually desires for more political influence. I am relating now to page 7, figure number 7. You see here a pie chart, and the question: should an Arab party join the government? Well, what we see here that almost 1/3 of the Arab public support the idea of joining the coalition, of course, under the right circumstances, and some 10% more say that the Arab anchors should support the government from the outset, as it was during the Rabin-Peres government some 2 decades ago. And we see that some 37% of the respondents say that they actually reject the idea of joining the government. So we have a total of 43 in favor and 37% who reject it. But actually, what we see here is more than more on this topic, because what we did is to ask the respondents, well, how would you react if a close relative of you, a family member, would actually become a Knesset member or a minister? And the results are very interesting here. We see that almost 73% said that they would actually be proud if a close relative of them become a Knesset member. And 74% say that they will be proud if a family member of them becomes a minister. And even 74% said that, hypothetically, they would be proud if a relative of them become president of the state of Israel. I think that these findings indicate a strong desire for active political influence. However, in the current circumstances, our politics is in crisis. We see that there is a big question mark whether the joint list will maintain its power in the next elections, but still we have to take into consideration that the potential is there, meaning that if the Arab parties who actually comprise the joint list will put aside their division lines, I think that the public will respond in a positive manner. And the last point here, I believe I still have time for this, I want to compare between the individual dimension and the collective dimension. Well, Arab citizens are an integral party of the Israeli reality. The typical Arab citizen feels to some extent belonging to the state of Israel, and he enjoys to some extent enjoys personal freedom and stability. I think this is clearly evident from the survey. However, when we examine the positions and attitudes of the participants in the focus groups, and here I want you to go to the last page, actually, page 10, we get somewhat, I would call, different perspective. We see that the participants in the focus groups, they strongly emphasize the Palestinian identity, and actually they strongly reject any reference to them as being Israeli Arabs or Arabs of Israel. You see here on the definition of being Palestinian. Well, we are Palestinian Arabs, and we are quite proud of that, very proud of that. And we are Palestinian citizens of Israel. One said that I'm first and foremost a Palestinian, nothing more than that. On the definition being an Israeli Arab or Israeli Arabs, well, they say that we are not the Arabs of Israel. One said I'm an Arab who does not belong to the state. My roots and my Arabism existed long before them. And the general definition of being an Arab citizen of Israel, well, this definition was accepted under the understanding that no one can live without citizenship, and only as long as the Israeli citizenship does not stand in contradiction with national identity. So what we see here is quite a paradox. On the one hand, we hear the positions voiced by the participants in the focus groups, and on the other hand, we see that actually on the individual level, Arab citizens enjoy and evaluate the living conditions in the state of Israel. I think that we have to explain this paradox. Well, one explanation is that Arab citizens demand civil rights by adopting loud national tones. And we have to take into consideration that in the current circumstances, when given the dominant status of the right-wing Jewish parties in Israel politics, Arab citizens have no other choice but to present their demands for equality with more national and loud tones. I think this might explain the difference between the collective and the individual. What I think is that in general view on the findings of the survey, I think that this survey suggests that the Arab citizens do evaluate their living conditions in Israel, but at the same time, they do not feel that they have to apologize for that. Not anymore, in any case. They are confident enough to express their Palestinian identity And they actually expect the Jewish public to realize that in a multicultural society, this fact does not jeopardize the state of Israel. In other words, Israel can be a Jewish nation state and a state of all the citizens and respect the national feelings of the Arab minority. Thank you again for following my talk, and I will leave time for Q&A later on the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Arik. Mohammed's line was dropped. I hope he's now with us. Mohammed, are you with us? Oh, great. Okay, good. So I don't know if you heard Arik's last sentences, but I definitely know you have the findings. Okay. Mohammad? Mohammad?
Let me dial. Hi, this is the operator. Let me dial out to Mohammed again. Give me one moment, please.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Arik?
Yeah.
Hi. So just taking the time because I see it takes a minute to connect Mohammed. I do have a question to present to you that was sent to me. Did you see any difference in the findings by sex, by gender?
Well, actually, what we did is to analyze the answers by three major parameters, which are level of education and religious affiliation and age. I don't recall any distinct differences between in terms of gender. As far as I remember right now, I don't have the detailed data in front of me right now, but I think that we had quite the same responses from both males and females.
Okay.
Pardon the interruption, Michal. Mohammed has just joined us again.
Okay. So, Mohammed, please, I'm not going to take any more risks in summarizing what Arik said and lose you again. So please, just go for it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michal, and thank you, Arik, for introducing this material. I was lucky to have had the chance also to work with Arik in a conference at Tel Aviv University for a first commentary on the results. And I would repeat at least a couple of things that I can notice as the first response. One, I think that what we see from this study is a clear sense of realism among the Arab public, realism of understanding where they are and understanding where they want to be. And I think this reflects not just in issues of identity, by saying we are both Israeli citizens and Palestinians by ethnic national identity, and not feeling that this is some kind of schizophrenic concept, but that this is a realistic approach that says we know that our civic identity is Israeli, and we know that our Palestinian identity is our ethnic identity is Palestinian. We're not ashamed of either one of those identities. And we want to try to make this combination actually work. And I think this is a process that has been going on mostly since the year 2000, since the second Palestinian Intifada, where the Arab leadership in Israel created what I would characterize as a firewall between our Palestinian hood and our Israeli hood. Meaning, for example, one of the decisions that was taken then is that we do not import the intifada type measures inside Israel because we have it tomorrow to worry about, such as our relationship, one, with the state of Israel, and second, with the Israeli Jewish public, where we need to share the same workplaces, the same study places, the same legal system, the same environment, the same roads, and the same public transportation. These kind of that decision has led the Arab community to maybe understand an identity that yes, we are part of the Palestinian people, but we have a separate destiny, and our destiny is going to be Israeli, and it's going to be inside Israeli, inside the Israeli state. So we need to master the art also of becoming Israeli citizens. And I would say that when you hear issues of criticism against Israeli politics among the higher elite, the higher political elite in the Arab community, or the academic elite in the Arab community, in a way you can say this is part of the Israelization. People feeling comfortable enough to understand the principles of democracy in Israel and to understand the margins of Israeli democracy that allow a wide spectrum of freedom of expression and freedom of political organization. And I think that the establishment of the joint Arab list in the 2015 elections is a good expression of that, where the Arab community felt forming an Arab political bloc, one, is an interest for the Arab community, and second, we don't see this as a clear threat or declaring war against our Israeli identity or against the Israeli political system. I think this is a level of comfort in the Israelization process and not necessarily just provoking, as many people would probably see it, as if the joint list and the coalition of the Arab parties, as if it's seen as an anti-Israeli political structuring. I would also add that when Arik spoke about the problems in the joint Arab list, I'm personally also very involved in two things. One, in trying to make this list stay together and stick together. And second, in due time, how do we bring more Arab voters to practice their democratic right of participation, which is participation in the elections. Because I think participation in the elections is the strongest exemplary way to show that Israelization and integration process. I would also go to some of Arik's points that says almost 67% of the Arab public is either interested in having the Arab parties either join a coalition or be part of a bloc that supports a coalition without formally joining it. That leaves us with 37% that did not vote. So we are still with the same proper bloc. The same 37% that are against engagement in Israeli politics are the same ones that boycotted the elections in the last elections, either by ideological boycott, which is almost half of that 37%, or by apathy, which is also present in the Israeli Jewish community. So I wouldn't. I don't think that the joint list is over. I think that the joint list is an expression, as I said, of the Israelization process. Yes, I agree with Arik that the Arab public today is coming with sort of an accounting sheet to the list, asking it what did it deliver, how much did it deliver, the will and implement the will and the needs of the Arab. Here I must say the Arab public is a bit less realistic in their expectations. I think that we're expecting much more from the joint list, which hasn't been able to deliver, mainly in light of operating under a right-wing government. And I don't think any Arab list could have been able to really bring some significant results. although the Joint Arab Program takes pride in being part of passing the 922 economic plan of the Israeli government, saying that they were partners in this decision about it. Is this going to affect the list in the next elections? Most polls show today that yes, that the joint list is probably going to be harmed by approximately maybe 20 to 30 to 40%, who knows? We still are far away from the elections, and we can't really tell the exact results. The better question, is this going to be a reason for alternative political powers that might emerge from the Arab community, that might challenge the monopoly that the Joint Arab List has sort of created in the last elections? I think there is a significant likelihood that such a competition might come. I think that this competition will be coming from more.
Mohammad?
I see Mohammad still connected. Give me one more moment. All right, he just got disconnected again. Let me dial out to Mohammad. One more moment.
I'm sorry for all this technical difficulties that we have today. Mohammad? So we'll pause it. Oh, is he connected?
Pardon. Yes, he is, and I'm opening his line. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, Michal. I'm sorry again. Technology is not helping us today very much. So I will end my initial response by saying two things. One, yes, there is a dispute, which I would call it the identity dispute or the constitutional dispute, that you can see it present in the results of the poll, that the Arab community are presenting significant questions about the meaning of the Israeli space that we want to live in, to make Israel more of Israeli nature and not just a Jewish space, but to make it more of an inclusive Israeli space. But that debate is actually being heated with two things. One, the nationality bill that is being presented right now from one end, and the political discourse with some of the more nationalist Arab political representatives that are trying to actually request the elimination of the Jewish identity of the state. But this is a debate that is mostly intellectual, and as Arik said in his introduction, you see it more present among high university graduates, people with higher degrees. It's less present among the general public, and most people, for example, do not know anything about the vision documents that were presented in 2006 that dealt with this matter. Most people are busy on the more horizontal approach and not the vertical approach of constitutional debate, but the horizontal issues of social, economic integration, trying to succeed better in accessing universities, succeed better in accessing jobs, improve capacity in engaging with government agencies that will end up with bringing results in budgets such as the 922, and now aiming for the next 922. We're saying that 922 was not actually enough, but it was a good step in the right direction. And also asking the question, what's the capacity that the Arab community needs to be in order to engage properly? And that's a debate that is even happening outside the Joint Arab List, with people demanding that the Joint Arab List stop being so provocative in some areas and become much more constructively engaged in Israeli politics. The question is, would the Joint List be able to adhere to these demands from the Arab community? And in that case, I would assume that we will see some changes in the structure of the Joint Arab List, and not just reflecting the four existing Arab political parties. And if it does not adhere to this pressure that is coming from the public, as I said earlier, I think this might be a nucleus for the creation of a new political force in the Arab community that might come with a challenge, mostly a challenge focusing on the constructive engagement and less on the nationalistic discourse that is being led by some of the components of the Joint Arab List.
Thank you.
I think I'll stop here.
Yes, thank you both, and obviously you'll add more as part of Q&A. So we'll open now. If there are any questions that you want to ask through the phone, you can press #1 on your phones, and the operator will open your line. In the meanwhile, I'll ask one question that I already received, which is, how do you see the findings of this survey, namely those of identity, let's say, changing if full economic integration is achieved, if Arabs are represented as they're sharing the population in all spheres of life? In this perhaps utopian situation, what would change in these findings, in both your opinions? Arik, do you want to take it first?
Sorry, could you repeat please the question?
Yes. How do you see the findings of this survey, namely those of identity, changing if full economic integration is achieved? Arabs are represented as they're sharing the population in all spheres of life. And how do you, in this utopian situation, let's say, what would change in these findings? What do you think would have changed in these findings?
I think that the question is what should be changed, because I want to remind us all that we actually conducted the telephone survey 1 month after the disturbances in Jerusalem, in Al-Aqsa Mosque. And still what I try to convey here, the message that the Israeli identity or reality, or precisely as Mohammad put it, realism, political realism, is very strong, was very strong about in the answers and the responses from the participants in this telephone survey. And I think that I don't see any future changes in identity, because I believe that Arab citizens here have reached a point that say, well, we are good enough Israeli citizens. Yes, sure, we have the 922 development plan, and we still want to see where it comes to real effect on the ground. And we are also part of the Palestinian people. We have a strong national identity. I think I would say carefully that there is, I see some balance in this game, this playing with identities in the the personal and collective identity of the Arab public. I think that, but if we take into consideration more integrated approach and more economic integration, I would see that the growing sense of belonging to the state and stability, more stability, I see that will be grow and even become at the highest levels.
Thank you, Mohammad. Do you want to reflect on that? Mohammad? Okay. We lost him again. Okay, we'll try to connect him, and I will continue. Is there anyone on the phone that would want to ask a question?
Yes, I'm opening a line now. Hold on one moment, please, and I'll try to connect Mohammad. I'm opening the line now. Go ahead, please. Your line is now open.
Hi, this is Sarah Silver. I have a question from the figure 3 on page 3. The sense of belonging to the state of Israel figures for young people 18 to 22 and then 23 to 29. There's a big leap, a big jump there, which is positive. And I'm curious to understand what accounts for that increase, given all that we've heard about sort of this lost age group who are neither working nor in school, and a sense of alienation. So can maybe you don't know, but if you do, could you sort of unpack this increase for us?
May I answer?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Sarah, this is a very good point. And actually, when we we compared the responses, well, we see that the age group of the youngest, the ages 18 to 22, they are a significant segment in the survey results. And you see, generally speaking, more skepticism, criticism, sense of alienation. They're not so optimistic about even in the general question, is Israel going in the right or wrong direction? And there is a good explanation about that because, well, we have to take into consideration that a young Arab high school graduate, well, he finishes his studies, and then what he has some choices. Well, he has to integrate into. Sorry, yeah.
No, please keep
going.
going.
Alex, please go ahead.
Okay,
Alex,
okay. Well, a typical young student graduate, he is in a dilemma. He has to leave his childhood environment and go into the big city, be it Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or Haifa, in order to integrate into the high school, high education system, or go outside to the job market. And there he encounters maybe the initial encounter, immediate encounter with the Jewish majority, with a predominant Hebrew environment and Jewish environment. What actually happens here, what we see is like a cultural shock, I would say. And we see that when do they recover? As soon as they get into the major labor force, meaning ages 23, 24, you see like a mirror flip here in the age group of 23 to 29. They tend to be more positive and tend to evaluate more positively their living conditions here in Israel. So this is the answer about that, and maybe Mohammad can elaborate on this.
Well, I am sorry. Again, my line fell, so I didn't hear the question. If you can repeat
Sarah,
it.
Sarah, can you repeat the question?
Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mohammad, hi. My question was on Arik's page 3, the figure 3, the measure of sense of belonging to the state of Israel for young people 18 to 22 and then young people 23 to 29. There's a big jump. And I was curious about that because we've heard a lot about this, the young people in the Arab community who are sort of lost because they're not, they're neither in the educational system nor working. So it's just curious. I'm curious to understand that leap, given what we've heard, because I wouldn't have expected to see that number go up.
Well, it's a time also where people get interaction with the Israeli Jewish public and with the Israeli political arena, and I think that again, this is the sense they're gaining experience in the Israeli identity, experience in the Israeli employment arena, increasing interaction with the Israeli educational system, and as a result, you get this impact. People interact with their reality. So you see people, for example, at university, those that go to university, their sense of Palestinian identity increases. But then when they go to the labor market after a couple of years, their sense of Israeli identity is increased, because their Israeli identity is about integration in work and finding success in life. People that are completely disconnected from the Israeli reality, they might have hopes of engagement, but you still don't have realistic assessment of their success. And the more people are finding jobs, and the more they're successful in their jobs, their sense of belonging, or their Israeli sense of belonging, does increase. And if they are employed, and I think that this is not from academic study. This is from my sense as someone that lives within an Arab village and within my community and interacts with it on a daily basis. People that are unemployed, they're angry. They're angry about their own leadership. They're angry about the government. They're angry about the system. They're angry about identity. Their identity is not providing them with proper solutions, and they're expecting answers. By the way, I heard another research that was also presented by Professor Sami Smoha, and also parallel to it, also another one that was done at the Israel Democracy Institute. Almost 70% of Arab citizens, when they're asked to choose between their Israeli civic agenda, social economic issues, versus Palestinian national identity, and they're forced to choose either or, 70% make their choice for the civic, social economic issues as more important than identity issues. So identity, in my view, is a transitional issue. It's a liquid issue. It changes by the level of success in engagement. The more success engagement you have, higher indications. The less engagement and success in finding stability, then people pull out of the system and vote no confidence by strengthening a more provocative identity aspect.
Thank you. Thank you, Mohammad. Donna, do we have another person on the line?
Yes, we do. I am opening a second line now. You're welcome.
This is Howard Sohn. Thank you both. Very helpful comments. The correlation between correlation with education is very interesting. It sounds as though education is good and maybe too much education not so good. And based on that, does the leadership? It's a question really about leadership and influencers. A little bit related to my cynical remark, but whether the leadership is coming from the overeducated or whether there are other influences or leadership. Can you say something about, and I guess this is especially in the context of Mohammad's comments about the potential for a new political force that's more focused on participation than on nationalism. Can you say something about leadership in the sense of influencers, not just the joint list? Obviously, the joint list is high-profile leadership, but where are the leadership influences, say, other than the joint list? What do we know about influencers and leadership, where the average person in the Arab community looks and for influence, leadership, guidance within the Arab community? Leadership influencers question.
Mohammad, do you want to start?
I think, yes, I think that the first obvious second-rate leadership that is still influencing is the municipal leadership. Mayors have a significant influence. I think that their actions in the last 2 years have been even sometimes contradictory to some of the political leadership. In many cases, many of the Arab municipal leaders refused to allow mass demonstrations based on issues of identity to happen in Arab towns and villages because they thought this might be negative influence on tourism, especially Israeli Jewish tourism that comes to Arab towns and leaves good shekels for the local businesses. And the municipal leadership wants to see more Israeli Jews come to Arab towns and villages and engage in economic interaction with the Arab community. The second tier of leadership, I would say, it's the business leadership. And I'm probably not giving you secrets, but many business leaders are behind the thinking of, is it time to try to promote a new parallel course of political leadership, the emergence of a new political entity that looks for engagement. The third leadership circle that is also active is civil society leadership, people that work in think tanks, that are presenting discourse in the media, new discourse in the media that challenges pretty much the stalemate that, or actually sometimes retreat in political status that is occurring and happening to the Arab citizens in Israel. There is a feeling that the Arab community is that some people in civil society are questioning the course of the political leadership, and now they're getting more and more airtime, meaning time on radio, time on television, time on the websites. Two of the three most dominant websites are very critical of the political leadership, specifically the website called Kol al-Arab, and the other is called the Bukra. They are they are in a very critical place, and you see the journalists are coming to account with the political leadership. And the position of the political leadership, we are still a young operation. The joint list is still a young exercise. You cannot judge it yet. It still needs a second round to be able to formulate itself to the maximum capacity of uniting its factors before you ask the joint list to start bringing results from the political arena. But I don't think that the general public is waiting for or is accepting this kind of answer as it is. They are coming and asking questions about if whether the joint list has exhausted its capacity by either putting to itself more of a nationalistic glass ceiling that creates this ability to engage properly in the Israeli politics. So leadership is there. I think it is in a way, I would say, even a healthy discussion with the existing Arab political leadership. And that second tier leadership is, to summarize, municipal, media leaders, civil society leaders, and you even get some people from the academia. Names such as Professor Faisal Azaizi has been active lately. Dr. Sami Mi'ari asking questions about the economic issues. Professor Asad Ghanem has been also very critical. So also the academia is beginning to ask questions about, is this the optimal situation? And when you start questioning it, the question is, can you make the existing list more relevant? And that's probably the best case scenario. And if not, what could be the alternative? Or what could be a parallel track?
Arik, do you want to reflect on the issue of Arab leadership before we take one more question?
Yes, well, I totally agree with Mohammad. I have just a short comment about that. I would say that leadership in the Arab sector, there's a strong municipal local leadership, not just the mayors and the head of local councils, who, as Mohammad said, well, they strive to avoid from any confrontation with state authorities, but also some local religious leaders. I think I remember back in October 15 when we had the so-called knives intifada in Jerusalem and the massive rally in Sachin supporting of Al-Aqsa. Well, one of the imams in Nazareth, I remember he said that, well, what have you done, this you political leadership? Have you resolved all the illnesses and internal divisions of the Arab society, so you go out to demonstrate? So you hear this voice of local leadership, and I think what Mohammad said is quite true.
Thank you.
Thanks, Howard. Do we have another question on the phone, or I will also ask a question that I received via email? Donna, operator, do we have another question on the phone?
There are no questions on the phone.
Okay, good. Thanks. So one last question that I received, which is probably good to take us also as a last question. What do you think the pragmatic implications of these findings for those who want to strengthen Jewish-Arab relations or state-minority relations? Do you want to start, Arik? Do you want to open?
Well, as I told you, I think that the main message from this survey is that you have to read correctly the attitudes of the Arab citizens as collective and the typical Arab citizen in the state. I had a personal conversation here in my office with one of the local leaders here in my office, and he said, well, as soon as you change a single thing in the status quo in Al-Aqsa Mosque, well, you see massive rallies and demonstrations. But the typical Arab citizen wants to make a living here in Israel. He's fully Israeli. He feels very much integrated to this Israeli reality. I think this is and what this survey is suggesting. It supports these notion with figures and data, and much like Mohammad said in the beginning of our talk here, that a realism on the part of the Arab citizens in Israel.
So I will add. Yes, I will add.
If you look at the findings and you want to try and translate that into pragmatic implications for those who want to strengthen state-minority relations or Jewish-Arab relations.
Mm-hmm. I mean, actually, I think that my first take is that we can get a lot of hopeful findings here that indicate that mainly employment and the creation of an Arab middle class inside Israel brings good results. The more constructive areas and the more space that is given to the Arab community to engage on the economic arenas, I think that creates good results. It increases what I call the islands of success in state-Arab community relations or in Jewish-Arab relations on community-to-community level. So my first recommendation would be take 922 15 billion shekels plan and make it what it should be. It should be 65 billion shekels plan to answer more holistic needs of the Arab community and to build on the success. The plan is showing, or the implementation, even it is initial stages, is beginning to show success. But as I always say, with food comes appetite. There is an appetite for equal integration of the Arab community, not just integration. When people think about coexistence in the Arab community, they also think about equality. These are two parallel concepts that come out from reading those results. And that the Arab community thinks mainly that their future is inside Israeli society. I would probably the last comment I would say again and again and again, the Israeli-Palestinian cross-border issue comes in as a spoiler in Jewish-Arab relations, and you see that on issues of identity, the Palestinian national conflict with Israel is always a factor of a debate, and that debate comes in Jewish-Arab relations or inside Israel or in state Arab community relations. And the more we contribute to the resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian regional conflict, the more success we can aspire for in Jewish-Arab relations in Israel. So economic integration, higher education, and as much as we can to contribute to the resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is what I read from the results.
Thank you. Thank you both for taking the time to share with us your thoughts on this, and the survey itself and more elaborated version of all these findings can be found on our website, all in English. And thank you, Arik. Thank you, Mohammad. I'm sorry for the technological difficulties, everyone. This call was recorded, and we'll edit it to kind of get rid of all the quiet minutes that we had. So it's also will be available on the website. Thank you very much. Happy Passover.
Thank you.
To those of you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.